Love does not make it through a wreck like this. People say you do not really know the person you married until the mask slips. For me, the mask fell the day I learned my wife was pregnant with her boss's child and still sleeping in our bed like nothing had changed. I wish that was the worst thing that happened on that Tuesday. It was not. My name is Jack Lawson, and 3 days ago I thought I had it figured out. We live in one of those small postcard towns where the parades block Main Street twice a year and folks wave from porches. I had a 2-story farmhouse with good bones and a never-ending list of projects, a construction outfit that kept the lights on, and a wife, Brooke, who turned heads wherever we went. She had sharp, magazine cover beauty that used to make me feel like I had somehow punched above my weight. Turns out the walls were already shifting. I just could not hear the studs creaking. It started at Linda Monroe's backyard barbecue last Saturday. Linda is the neighbor who knows your news before you do and treats gossip like a sport with medals. I stood by her fence nursing a beer, watching Brooke glide around in a bright sundress when her best friend Kayla drifted close. Their voices carried in that way people think is private but never is. So, when are you going to tell Jack about the little surprise? Kayla asked, way too pleased with herself. Brooke laughed, thin and sharp as a glass nick. Why mess up a good thing? Grant says we should wait until after the promotion. Grant Walker, her boss from corporate. 6'2", silver at the temples, money heavy enough to bend light. The kind of man who wears $1,000 suits and parks cars that cost more than most homes. Besides, Brooke added, Jack is buried in his little job sites. Half the time he barely notices I am there. This baby deserves better than sawdust and broken plans. The bottle slipped from my hand and shattered on the concrete. Heads turned. I was already moving, out the gate, down the sidewalk, like a house set on a crooked footing and starting to lean. That night, I went through our shared phone calendar. There it was. Brooke had an appointment with Dr. Emily Rhodes on Tuesday morning. She labeled it as a routine checkup, but nothing in her life had been routine for months. Late client dinners. Jewelry I did not buy. A new coolness in her eyes like I was a mess to be cleaned up. Tuesday came fast and heavy. I tailed Brooke's silver German sedan from our place on Maple Ridge Road to the medical complex downtown. I parked my pickup where I could see and watched her walk into the women's health clinic like she owned the ground under her feet. An hour later she came back out, sunlight on her hair, phone to her ear, smile big enough to split her face. Grant, it is confirmed. 12 weeks, she said, voice carrying across the lot like a hammer on steel. I know. Jack has no idea. I drove home in a fog, fingers locked around the wheel. 12 weeks. Do the math. That was right around Valentine's Day, when I was in Dallas for 3 days finishing a commercial build-out, and she said she was too sick with the flu to come along. Suddenly, all the little pieces found their place. The new necklace that came from a raffle. The late nights. The way she started looking at me like a stain. I pulled into the driveway and stared at the house I have been rehabbing for 2 years. The wraparound porch was half done, stacks of lumber by the steps like good intentions waiting their turn. The whole place looked tired, like it wanted to be beautiful and just could not get there. And then I made my first mistake. I decided to confront her straight on. Brooke came in around 6 o'clock with takeout from Siam Garden, the good Thai place on Main Street. She had that post-work glow I used to be proud of. Now it turned my stomach. We need to talk, I said, blocking the kitchen doorway. She set the bags down and faced me. Annoyance first. Then something colder settled in. About what? About Grant Walker, I said. About the child you are carrying that is not mine. Quiet stretched out, wide as a field between us. Then she smiled. Not the warm one I married 8 years ago, the other one. The one with edges. Took you long enough, she said, breezing past me toward the stairs. I wondered when you would grow a brain. That is it, I said. That is what you have to say? She stopped on the 3rd step and posed like a staged picture, hand on the banister. What do you want from me, Jack? I am sorry. It did not mean anything. She laughed, the sound bouncing around our half-finished living room. It means everything. Grant can give me what you cannot. Security. Status. A future where I am not wondering if we make rent. We own this place outright, I said. My business is solid. Your business is small-time jobs in a dying mill town, she said, cutting right over me. Grant is offering me a vice president role at the regional office. Real money. Real opportunities. And his child. Her hand drifted to her still flat stomach like instinct. Something in me went tight and steady. You know what else I have? I said. A calendar, a memory, and a good ear. She gave me that polished smile again, the one that sells whatever it needs to sell, and for the first time I saw it plain. The life I thought we shared had been staged, and I was the only one who did not know it. I stood there in the smell of basil and fish sauce and fresh-cut pine, listening to the quiet tick of the kitchen clock, and I decided this would not end with me begging. It would end with the truth on the table and my hands steady. A child with a trust fund and private school already lined up, Brooks said, cool as ice. Not bad for 3 months of work. The casual cruelty of it hit me like a board to the chest. Get out, I said. Excuse me. Pack your things and get out of my house. Tonight. Her perfect composure cracked a hairline. Do not be dramatic, Jack. We can work this out. I will keep the baby. You keep the house. Everybody wins. Everybody wins. The words came out of me like a roar I did not know I had left. You cheat, you get pregnant by your boss, and now you want to work it out. It is not like we had anything real, she said, voice turning to glass. When was the last time you actually looked at me? I am 34. I am not wasting my good years playing house with a man who treats me like furniture. I did not answer. I went upstairs, yanked her suitcases from the closet, and threw them on the bed. Pack. Now. You cannot kick me out, she said, chin high. I live here too. Watch me. For the next hour I stood in the doorway while she folded designer blouses and slid expensive heels into their little bags. She moved slow on purpose, dragging every second like an anchor, waiting for me to blink. I did not. When she finished, I carried both suitcases downstairs and tossed them through the front door. They hit the gravel with a thud, popped open, and spilled silk and lace like a busted piñata. You are making a mistake, Brooke said from the threshold. No, I said, and shut the door in her face. I am fixing one. Through the living room window, I watched her gather clothes with tight, jerky motions. Linda Monroe was in her garden next door, pretending to fuss with tomatoes while taking in every last detail. By morning, the whole town would know Jack Lawson set his wife on the curb. Good. Let them talk. I cracked a beer and sat on the half-finished porch, the one I have been promising to wrap all the way around since last summer, watching Brooke load her silver German sedan. Twice she paused and looked back at the house like she expected me to come running, to beg. I raised the bottle in a mock toast and took a slow drink. She shut the trunk, slid behind the wheel, and drove off. Tail lights bled into the evening like dying stars. For a minute, I let myself believe that was the end of it. It was not. Around midnight, headlights swept across the yard. Not Brooke's sedan. Something bigger, darker. A black luxury sport utility vehicle idled in my drive, engine humming. 3 men climbed out with the practiced ease of people who are used to taking what they want. I knew the big one. Derek Cole, 6 feet 4 inches of ex-military muscle, worked as head of security for Grant Walker. I had seen Cole around town at charity galas and ribbon cuttings, always in an expensive suit that could not quite hide the hard shape he wore under his left arm. I grabbed the old baseball bat by the door and stepped onto the porch. Private property, I said. Turn around. Cole smiled with a row of 2 white teeth. Easy there, Carpenter. We just want to chat. Nothing to talk about. Boss says otherwise. Cole tipped his head at the 2 younger men, both with prison yard swagger and dead eyes. Says you have been harassing his girl. Not very neighborly. His girl was my wife until about 6 hours ago, I said. Funny how fast that changed. Cole came closer until I could smell the cologne fighting with something darker and metallic. Here is how this works. You apologize to Mrs. Lawson for your little tantrum. You take her back, quietly. And when that baby shows up, you smile and call it yours. Or what? Or we get creative about teaching manners. I tightened my grip on the bat. 3 against 1 does not sound fair. Fair has nothing to do with it, Cole said. This is about you learning your place. And what place is that? Under my boss's heel. That is when I swung. The bat caught Cole in the ribs with a crack that felt good all the way up my arms. He doubled over with a grunt. For half a second, I thought I had a shot. Then the 2 behind him unfolded a telescoping baton like a metal snake, and the night exploded. 1 hit clipped my temple. Stars. Another hit took the legs out from under me. Gravel. Boots. A 3rd hit turned the world to black. When I came back, I was in the dark, bouncing. Trunk space. Wrist zip-tied behind me. mouth full of copper. Every pothole punched my skull. The air stank of rubber and hot motor oil. I swallowed, and it burned. The car finally stopped. The trunk lifted. Cole's silhouette cut against pine branches and a thin sliver of moon. We were out in the woods, the kind of deep where a scream would never make it to a porch light. "Rise and shine, sleeping beauty," Cole said, hauling me up by the shirt. Time for school. They had stripped me to boxers and work boots. October air knifed through my skin. My teeth knocked together on their own. I planted my feet on cold dirt and felt the rough roots under my soles. I looked at Cole, at his two shadows fanning out, and I knew the same thing I always know when a job gets ugly. Measure twice, cut once. Keep your breathing even. Live through the next 5 minutes. Whatever lesson they planned to teach, I would be alive to remember it. My ribs felt like they were full of broken glass, and something warm crawled down my temple into my ear. "Here is the lesson," Derek Cole said, flipping open a hunting knife that caught the moonlight. "You do not touch what belongs to Grant Walker. You do not threaten what belongs to Grant Walker. And you sure do not embarrass what belongs to Grant Walker. She is not property," I managed through split lips. "Everything is property if you have enough money," he said. He pressed the blade to my throat just enough to carve a thin, stinging line. "Including you. So what is the plan?" I asked. "Finish me and bury me out here." Cole smiled wider. "Nothing that dramatic. The boss wants you alive, just humbled. He wants you to understand what it costs to cross him." He nodded. The other two grabbed my arms and drove me to my knees. Pine needles dug into my skin. Cole drew back a fist. This is what happens when small-town boys forget their place. What came next was 20 minutes of professional intimidation. No broken bones. No permanent damage. They were good enough to hurt me without tripping any alarms at an emergency room. By the end, I felt like I had been hit by a logging truck and dragged for a mile, but I was still breathing. "Tell anyone about our little chat," Cole said as they hauled me deeper into the trees, "and next time will not be this friendly." They lashed me to a pine with zip ties and left me there, boxers, work boots, skin raw, 5 miles from the nearest paved road. October cold slid straight through me like water through a crack. My fingers prickled and went numb. I could hear coyotes somewhere off to the east, and the wind combed through the needles overhead like a whisper. "Someone will find you eventually," Cole called over his shoulder. "Or they will not. Either way, you learned." Their footsteps faded. The night pressed in. I worked my wrists against the bark until the skin burned. I used anger for heat. I counted breaths, 10 at a time, then start again, so I would not drift off. Somewhere around 4 in the morning, with the sky just starting to gray, the plastic bit, stretched, and finally snapped. It took another 2 hours to limp through the woods, following a shallow ditch I knew would meet a fire road, then the old logging track, then something that looked like the edge of civilization. When I finally hit pavement, I must have looked like a monster from a low-budget horror film, bloody, barefoot in boots, dragging one leg, talking to myself to stay awake. Ray Bennett found me collapsed beside Highway 15. He is a retired cop who lives in a cabin 10 miles out and keeps to himself unless something is truly wrong. "Good Lord, Jack," he said, lifting me into his ancient pickup. The seat springs squeaked under my weight. "What in the world happened?" "Grant Walker happened," I said. His face hardened. "Everybody in our county knows Walker's reputation. Most folks pretend they do not." "We should get you to a hospital," Ray said. "No hospitals. No police," I said. "Just somewhere safe. I need to think." He studied me a long second, weighing it. Then he nodded once. "My place." The rest of that day, Ray cleaned cuts, wrapped ribs, and fed me salty soup from a dented pot while I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, only shaking his gray head now and then or muttering something that sounded like a prayer and a curse rolled together. "So what is your play?" he asked when I finished. "I do not know yet." "You better figure it out fast," he said. "Men like Walker do not give second warnings. Next time will be permanent." That night, I lay on Ray's lumpy couch with my ribs taped tight. I stared at the ceiling and let the hot, messy anger settle into something colder and sharper. Grant Walker thought he had shown me my place. He was wrong. I spent the next week at the cabin healing and planning. Ray has his own network, retired officers, road crews, bar owners, mechanics. Small towns run on folks like that, quiet lines of talk that never touch a newspaper. By day 3, I knew more about Walker's business than his own bookkeeper. He is dirty, but he is careful. Nothing that screams felony. Just creative accounting, sweetheart deals, and rigged bids that turn flexible morals into cash. He owns half the commercial strip downtown. He keeps a hand in 3 different construction companies. He keeps a pocket of local officials who jump when he clears his throat. But every man has a soft spot. Walker's is his ego. He needs people to see him as untouchable. He feeds on fear and respect, and the story that he always wins. That need to be seen would be the place I hit him. First target, Derek Cole. I spent 2 days watching Cole's routine and learning his habits. Every Tuesday, he hits Mac's Tavern on Main Street, orders top-shelf whiskey, and scares the locals without ever raising his voice. He parks his spotless black luxury sedan in the alley out back, out of sight of foot traffic and far from the drunks who might key a door. I waited, quiet as a man behind a wall listening for studs, and pictured exactly how this would start. Measure twice. Cut once. Then make it hurt. Tuesday night, I was waiting. Right before midnight, Derek Cole lurched out of Mac's Tavern. He was drunk enough to be sloppy, not drunk enough to fall down. Perfect. I stepped out of the alley shadow with the aluminum bat I had borrowed from Ray's garage hanging loose at my side. Remember me? I asked. His hand twitched toward the shoulder holster under that fancy jacket. Too slow. Too drunk. I snapped the bat across his knuckles. The pistol skittered across the wet pavement, clacked against the curb, and spun to a stop. Easy there, tough guy, I said, booting the gun into the storm drain. We are only going to talk. You are a dead man, Lawson, he slurred. Maybe, I said. But first, you learn some manners. What followed was not pretty, and I did not pretend it was. I did not break bones or cut him. I had learned from the best, his crew. Pain without permanence. I made sure he would remember every second of our little class. When I finished, I zip-tied his wrists behind his back and duct-taped him into the driver's seat of his spotless black luxury sedan. I rolled every window down, cranked the heat all the way up, and slid a bucket of raw shrimp I had bought from the fish market up onto the dashboard. By the time anyone finds you, I said, this car will smell like low tide and regret. Enjoy telling your boss. Then I took pictures with Cole's own phone, face, ties, shrimp bucket, and posted them to every account he had. It took an hour for the photos to circle town. By morning, the big scary enforcer was a shrimp-scented joke on every screen in the county. At 10 o'clock sharp, I parked across from Grant Walker's office tower. I did not go in. I just waited with the window down where he could see me. He came out with 2 new guards who looked meaner than the last pair. Hair perfect. Suit worth a month of most folks' paychecks. He looked like success carved in stone, until his eyes found mine. I lifted a hand and waved. Beautiful morning, is it not, Grant? I called. His jaw went tight. He said something to the guards, but they were smart enough to respect witnesses and cameras. They hustled him into the Bentley and rolled away. The message landed. I was not hiding. That afternoon, Brooke showed up at Ray's cabin, standing on the porch in a designer dress cut to frame the new curve of her belly. Jack, we need to talk, she said. Nothing to talk about, I said, not getting up from the chair. You cannot keep doing this, she hissed. Grant's lawyers can kiss my backside. Her perfect control slipped. You are going to get yourself killed. Maybe, I said. But before that, everybody in this town is going to know exactly what kind of woman you chose to be. What is that supposed to mean? I held up my phone. The town's private social group, the digital rumor mill that never sleeps, was on fire. At the top sat a clear photo of Brooke and Grant kissing beside the neon sign at the Riverbend Motel, plus a tidy timeline of their meetings. Linda Monroe has been busy, I said, watching the color drain from Brooke's face. Turns out she has been tracking your little motel runs for months. People notice a lot when they actually look. You fool, Brooke whispered. I learned from the best. Her phone started buzzing. She scrolled, and her face went gray at the comments. The confidence leaked right out of her. This will not work, she said, but the edge was gone. Grant will not let you ruin him. Grant is going to be busy saving himself, I said. You? You will be on your own. She left without another word. Through the window, I watched her speed down the gravel like something was chasing her. It was the truth. That night a brick came through Ray's front window. A note was tied to it with baling twine. Back off or else. Subtle, Ray muttered, sweeping up glass. Real subtle. They are getting desperate, I said. Desperate men do stupid things, Ray said. You sure you want to keep poking this bear? I thought about it for 2 seconds. Yes. The next phase needed more needle and less hammer. Grant Walker built his empire on reputation and fear. That meant his real weak spot was embarrassment in daylight. I started small. Anonymous tips to the local paper about sweetheart bids that kept landing in the same hands. Carefully worded questions at town council meetings about campaign donations and no-bid contracts. Nothing that would get tossed as slander. Just enough to plant seeds, to make decent people tilt their heads and ask, now hold on. 2 weeks in, the whisper line turned into a low growl. Folks who had stayed silent for years started swapping stories over coffee. A pair of shop owners compared notes and realized they had both been muscled into lopsided leases. A paving contractor talked about bids that never seemed to open to anyone but Walker's friends. The real break came when I sat down with Ethan Parker, a local reporter who had been chasing Walker for years but never had enough to print. We met in a diner booth with a coffee ring burned into the wood and a pie case humming behind us. I slid him a folder, dates, copies, photographs, and a list of people who would talk if someone else talked first. He lifted the first page, read a line, and looked up at me like he had just found the edge of a map. This enough to start? I asked. For the first article, he said. Not the last. I sipped my coffee and felt something I had not felt since the porch was new and the house still looked hopeful. It was not victory. Not yet. But it was movement in the right direction. Measure twice. Cut once. Keep going. I can give you everything you need. I told Ethan Parker over coffee at a diner just outside the county line. But it has to be done right. No wild guesses, no barroom rumors, only facts. Ethan's eyes lit up like a kid seeing snow on Christmas morning. What is your angle here, Jack? What do you get out of this? Justice, I said. I thought about Brooke's cruel laugh, Derek Cole's fists, and the taste of pine needles and blood in my mouth. That is enough. For the next month, Ethan and I built our case like a frame that had to hold weight. Bank records, copies of wire transfers, lease agreements that bent the rules, witness statements from folks who had kept quiet for years. We stacked the pages in order, dates tight, signatures clear, until the paper trail read like a lesson in small-town corruption. The story landed on a Thursday morning, front page, full width, money, power, and concrete. The Grant Walker machine exposed. By noon, every newsroom in the state was chasing it. By nightfall, radio talk shows were saying Walker's name with that slow, careful tone people use when a giant finally stumbles. The state attorney general announced a formal review. The Federal Bureau of Investigation opened a file. The county prosecutors started sending subpoenas like certified letters before a storm. Within a week, 3 of Walker's biggest public contracts were suspended pending examination. But the worst damage was not in court. It was in church foyers and grocery aisles, and the line at the drive-thru. In a town like ours, reputation is currency, and Walker's account went to zero overnight. The man who had run meetings with a nod and a half-smile was suddenly a punchline, the big shot taken down by a contractor with a spine. Brooke tried to cut herself free from the wreck. The affair was an open secret now, and her pregnancy had turned into a town-wide guessing game. She moved in with Kayla for a while. But even Kayla started looking at her like a problem that could not be solved with wine and a whispered plan. One Friday night at Mac's Tavern, I was working on a burger when I heard Linda Monroe at the next table. She never needs a microphone. The room does it for her. Can you believe the nerve? Linda said, walking around like the victim while carrying another man's child. I heard Walker has not called her in 2 weeks, another woman said. Soon as the heat turned up, he vanished. What did she expect? Linda answered. Men like that do not leave their wives for a fling. They use and toss. Always have. By the time that table was done, Brooke's reputation had fallen as hard as Walker's. I should have felt satisfied. The people who tried to break me were finally meeting the wall. But something in me was not finished. The last round happened on a cold November evening at the Maple Ridge Mill, the old brick skeleton that gave our road its name. It had been empty for 20 years, the kind of place teenagers dare each other to enter. I picked it because it sat alone, because it meant something to this town, and because whatever happened there would echo. Grant Walker showed up alone, which surprised me. I expected hired muscle or lawyers. Instead, he climbed from a tired Toyota sedan, His fancy car had been hauled off the week before, and he looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 2 months. "You wanted to meet?" he said. The command in his voice was gone. "Here I am." "Funny how things change," I said, stepping out from the shadow of a broken doorway. 2 months ago, you had me beaten and dumped in the woods. Now you are in a 15-year-old sedan and renting the small apartment above the hardware store. His jaw tightened. He did not deny it. The investigations had frozen his accounts. His wife had filed and taken her share. The fall was real and fast. "What do you want?" he asked. "An apology would be a good start," I said. "For what?" "For thinking you own this town. For thinking you own my wife. For thinking you could crush me and walk away clean." He laughed without humor. "You think you won? You think making me smaller makes you the hero? I think it makes us even." "Even?" He finally showed real anger. "You cost me everything. My business, my name, my marriage." "Your marriage?" I stepped closer until I could see the thin sweat at his hairline. "You mean the one you betrayed while you were in my house with Brooke? That marriage?" "At least I did not air my dirty laundry for the world," he snapped. "No," I said. "You just try to have me beaten to death for catching you." We stood 10 feet apart on cracked concrete, broken glass glittering between us. Two men who had both lost almost everything, for very different reasons. "So now what?" Walker asked. "You going to finish the job and claim self-defense in this ruin?" "Nothing that dramatic," I said, taking out my phone. "I just want to make sure the world knows who Grant Walker really is." I opened the app, tapped Go Live, and turned the camera toward him. The viewer counter ticked up, 10, 20, 50. Comments bloomed like weeds. I held the lens steady and spoke plain. The night air felt like a clean sheet of paper. Curious townspeople had been following this mess like it was a soap opera that aired twice a day. I lifted my phone, the red live light winking back at me, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Grant Walker, the man who thought he could not be touched. The man who broke families for fun and profit. The man who was about to meet accountability." Walker's face went white when he realized what I was doing. "Turn that off," he snapped. "Or what?" I asked. "You going to have your boys rough me up again?" "Oh, wait. Derek Cole is running mall security now for $12 an hour. Funny how loyalty dries up when the money stops." "You son of a witch," he hissed. "My mother was a saint compared to you," I said, keeping the camera tight on his face. Now about that apology. What followed was 18 minutes of the most satisfying live stream I have ever been part of. Twice Walker tried to step out of frame. Twice I shifted with him and kept him boxed in by broken brick and the cold air of Maple Ridge Mill. The comments poured in like rain. Little hearts, angry faces, names I recognized from around town, and names from far away. Former employees typed out what he had done to them. Promises made, hours shaved, threats whispered. Shop owners explained the sweetheart leases and the fees that were never on paper. Regular folks said what everyone had been thinking for years. It was not respect he carried. It was fear. By the time I thumbed end, Walker was crying in short, ugly bursts. The polish was gone. Under the suit, he was what he always was, a greedy man who mistook fear for respect. "Are we done?" he asked, voice hoarse. "Almost," I said. I walked to my truck and came back with a fat manila envelope. "One last thing." I handed it to him. Inside were clean copies of everything Ethan Parker and I had gathered: bank records, signed statements, dated memos, and a few recorded call transcripts that would sour milk. "This is your life's work," I said. "Take a good look at what arrogance bought you." He pulled the pages out with shaking hands. The color drained from his face one sheet at a time. When he finished, he lifted his eyes with something close to respect. "You are thorough. I will give you that." "I learned from the best," I said. "You taught me that documentation is everything." He stood there a long minute, papers in both hands, then let out a broken laugh that echoed in the empty mill. "You want to know the funny part? I actually respected you. I figured you for a small-town loser who did not know his place. But you were dangerous. Only to people who earn it," I said. Walker nodded, like a man accepting a sentence. "For what it is worth, I am sorry about the beating. Cole went too far." "Cole followed orders," I said. "Yeah," he muttered, glancing up at the busted windows and the spray paint. "Fitting, is it not? Two men who lost everything meeting in a building that is already dead." "I have not lost everything," I said. "I have my self-respect back, and I have nothing left to lose." He turned toward his car, then paused with the door half open. Watch yourself, Jack. Men like me do not stay down. We are cockroaches. We survive and we come back. Men like you are why the world needs men like me, I said. He drove off into the dark without another word. I sat on the hood of my truck and watched the sun bleed out behind the tree line. For the first time in months, I felt something simple and solid. Peace. The live video blew up by morning. Thousands of views, hundreds of shares, strangers piling on with their own stories about crooked officials and bully businessmen. Grant Walker had become a symbol for everything folks were tired of, and his public unmasking gave a lot of quiet people a louder voice. But the real win was smaller than headlines. 3 days later, I was back on Maple Ridge Road, putting down the last run of boards on the porch I had left half-finished for 2 years. The work was clean and honest. Measure, cut, set the nail. It felt good to make a straight line again. That is when Brooke and Kayla pulled up. They got out slow, like people walking away from a crash. Brooke's designer dresses were gone. She wore discount store maternity clothes, and her hair hung dull and unwashed. Kayla looked worse. Dark circles, jittery hands, that hunted look of someone who learned that loyalty was a word, not a shield. We need to talk, Brooke said. The command in her voice was gone. About what? I asked, setting the hammer on the rail. About ending this. About a truce. A truce. I turned to face them. What makes you think we are at war? Do not play dumb, Jack. Brooke snapped, then checked herself. You have torn down everything Grant built. You have made me a pariah in my own town. You have. I have held people accountable, I said. It is not the same as war. Kayla stepped in, desperation warping her words. You do not understand what you started. Grant is finished, and he is pulling the rest of us under. I am losing my house. Brooke cannot get hired anywhere. We are both. You are both meeting consequences, I said. Welcome to the real world. This is not justice, Brooke said, voice breaking. This is revenge. Sometimes they overlap. She began to cry, not the pretty tears she used to get her way, but raw sobs from a person out of moves. Under different skies, I might have felt sorry for her. I am pregnant, Jack, she said. Whatever you think of me, this child does not deserve the fallout. You are right, I said, and that surprised both of them. A child deserves better than a mother who treats adultery like a promotion and a father who orders beatings like room service. Then help us, Kayla pleaded. You made your point. The whole county knows what we did. Is that not enough? I thought about it. I looked at these two women who once walked around like they owned the weather. Now they were smaller, tired, on my porch asking for something I did not owe. No, I said. It is not. What more do you want? Brooke asked. I want you to understand that choices carry weight, I said. I want you to live with the life you picked. I want you to wake up every day and remember you built it. That is cruel, she whispered. So is bringing your boss into our bed, I said. So is asking me to raise another man's child. So is sending men to beat me and dump me in the woods. For a second her chin lifted, and I saw the old steel. You think you are righteous. The wounded husband acting noble. I think I am a man who got pushed and finally pushed back. What about forgiveness? Kayla said. What about moving on? I will move on when I am ready, I said. Right now I am exactly where I want to be. They went back to the car with the slow, careful steps of people who know the ground is uneven. I watched them drive away. I did not feel joy in their pain. I did not feel regret either. That night, I sat on my finished porch with a beer and looked out at the little town that raised me, broke me, and then forged me into something steadier. The boards under my boots were straight. The nails were set deep. The railing was true. For the first time in a long time, the house and I felt square.